Imagine spending $2 million opening a restaurant in one of the most glamorous cities on Earth. You hire world-class chefs. You design an interior that costs more than most people's homes. You earn a Michelin star. And then one morning, you walk in, look out at your perfectly set tables, the candles, the glassware, the menus, and there is not a single customer. Not one. According to multiple industry reports and on-the-ground accounts from journalists based in Dubai, that is not a hypothetical. That is the reality some of Dubai's top dining venues are facing right now. And the story behind those empty tables is far more important than just one bad season. Welcome to Strategic Dynamics Edge, where we cut through the noise and show you what is actually happening in global economies and industries. If you want honest analysis without a sponsor pushing a narrative, subscribe right now and hit the bell. We do this every single week. And drop a comment below. Are you in Dubai? What are you seeing on the ground? Tell us. We read every single comment. Now, before we go any further, an important note. Everything in this video is based on publicly available reports, industry commentary, and economic analysis. Figures and projections may change over time. This content is for informational and educational purposes only and does not constitute financial, investment, or legal advice. Views expressed are analytical opinions and should not be interpreted as statements of absolute fact. Always verify through multiple reliable sources before drawing conclusions. Now, back to those empty tables. Because what is reportedly happening in Dubai's restaurant and hospitality sector right now is one of the most revealing economic case studies in recent memory. Dubai ended 2025 on what its own tourism authority described as a record-breaking year, reporting nearly 20 million international visitors and hotel occupancy averaging above 80% across the year. New restaurant licenses were being issued at a remarkable pace. Internationally recognized chefs were signing lease agreements for new concepts. The city's dining scene had grown so dense with Michelin-recognized venues and celebrity chef outposts that serious food media from London, New York, and Tokyo were genuinely discussing whether Dubai had become one of the most exciting dining cities on the planet. That was not just marketing. That was based on what was actually on the ground. Then, in early 2026, military conflict in the broader region dramatically altered the travel environment around the Middle East. Multiple aviation and travel industry reports documented tens of thousands of flight cancellations affecting routes to and from the region. Without flights, international visitors could not arrive. Without visitors, hotels began to empty. And without hotel guests, the restaurants, beach clubs, rooftop bars, and entertainment venues that depended on that visitor flow began to feel the impact almost immediately. Economic analysis firms, including projections cited in financial and hospitality trade media, warned of severe short-term declines in hotel occupancy across Dubai, with some forecasts suggesting drops of extraordinary magnitude compared to the record highs of 2025. Senior figures within Dubai's hospitality sector described the situation to trade publications using language that would have been unthinkable 18 months earlier, comparing the shock to the kind of sudden stop in tourism flows last seen during the global pandemic. According to journalist accounts and industry reporting from inside the city, some of Dubai's most iconic dining and leisure destinations, waterfront boardwalks, marina promenades, rooftop venues, experienced a dramatic and sudden thinning of visitor traffic. Restaurants that previously required bookings weeks or even months in advance reportedly had tables available with no notice. Venues that were symbols of Dubai's global dining ambition were, according to some accounts, operating at a fraction of their normal capacity. Industry voices speaking to trade publications painted a picture of real financial pressure. Some restaurant group operators with multiple outlets and hundreds of employees publicly described their cash runway in terms of months rather than years. A level of candor that signals genuine distress rather than cautious planning. Some neighborhood dining operators reported that certain premium venues had seen footfall declines of an extraordinary scale. And in what industry observers described as a historic first for Dubai's fine dining sector, At least one Michelin-recognized establishment reportedly reduced its prices publicly and openly, not as a promotion, but to attract the residents who remained in the city after the tourist base had largely disappeared. Here is where the story becomes genuinely important, and this is the dimension most coverage is not fully addressing. The geopolitical disruption did not create the underlying fragility in Dubai's restaurant market. It revealed fragility that was already present beneath the surface. Dubai reportedly has over 13,000 food and beverage outlets operating within a city of under 4 million permanent residents. That ratio, by any global standard, reflects a decade of expansion built on the assumption that high-volume international tourism would continue to grow without interruption. Industry data suggested that restaurant operating margins in Dubai were already running in the single digits, between 8 and 11%, even before the current disruption. Commercial rents had risen sharply over the previous decade, and prime location rents had reached levels that, at those margins, left very little room for any sustained drop in revenue. And the critical detail about commercial rent, it does not pause when tourists stop coming. The invoice arrives regardless of how many covers were served. What this means is that the model many of Dubai's tourism-facing restaurants were operating on, premium rents, premium fit-outs, premium staffing, positioned entirely around the continuous arrival of high-spending international visitors, had no real buffer built into it. When the inflow stopped, even temporarily, the math stopped working. A journalist based in Dubai wrote something recently that captured this moment more precisely than any statistic. She described going about daily life in the city and noticing that roads which usually took 40 minutes now took 20. She described waterfront areas that were normally slow-moving human tides during peak season as suddenly navigable, even pleasant. She wrote that at first, she and a companion found themselves almost enjoying the quieter Dubai, as if they had reclaimed the city from the tourist crowds. And then she reflected and realized she was wrong. She actually missed the tourists. She wrote that without them, the energy drains out of the city. The buildings are still there. The infrastructure is intact. The lights are on. But the thing that made the city feel alive, the constant, overwhelming global energy of a place where the whole world always seemed to be arriving or departing, had gone quiet. And the restaurants and beach clubs and rooftop bars were where that energy had been most densely concentrated. Their emptiness is not just an economic statistic. It is the sound of a city missing something it did not fully value until it was gone. So let us answer the central question directly. Is Dubai bankrupt? No. The UAE is one of the most financially capitalized sovereign states on earth, with reserves and institutional capacity that can absorb disruption at this scale without anything resembling structural collapse. Government relief measures for the hospitality sector have been announced. The city will not run out of money, but there is a different kind of reckoning underway, not a financial bankruptcy, but the bankruptcy of a premise. The premise that an economy can build its entire identity around the perpetual, uninterrupted arrival of the world's most mobile and most demanding consumers, and that this flow will continue regardless of what happens in the geopolitical environment surrounding it. Tourism reportedly represents nearly 13% of the UAE's GDP and supports hundreds of thousands of jobs, the majority held by expatriate workers. When that share of economic activity contracts suddenly, the human consequences are not abstract. Dubai will recover. It has absorbed shocks before and historically has recovered faster than most comparable cities when conditions allow. But the more instructive question is this: when international visitors do return, will the restaurant industry they find be the same one that existed before? Or will the months of closures and permanent exits by operators who ran out of runway produce something different, leaner, more locally grounded, more honest about its own sustainability? The fine dining establishment that reportedly cut its prices for the first time in its history did not do that because of one difficult month. It did that because the model it was built on had temporarily stopped working. If that model does not fully return, the industry will have to find a different one. That is the real story of Dubai's quieter restaurants right now. Not just a crisis triggered by external events, a moment of reckoning for a city that constructed what many considered the most extraordinary food and beverage scene in the world, and perhaps did not ask clearly enough what would happen if the world stopped showing up. If this gave you a clearer and more honest picture of what is actually happening beneath the headlines, please share this video. Share it with someone tracking Dubai, someone in hospitality, or someone who wants to understand how tourism-dependent economies really behave under pressure. Subscribe to Strategic Dynamics Edge right now if you have not already. Hit the bell. We are going deeper on what comes next. Which parts of Dubai's economy bounce back first, which restructure permanently, and what lessons this moment holds for every city that has built its model on the assumption of permanent global tourism growth. Leave a comment. Tell us what you are seeing if you are in Dubai. Which venues have gone quiet near you? Which ones are still holding on? What does the city feel like right now? We want to know. See you in the next one.